Director Tom Hackney, Director of Investigations and Homeland Security. Going to do some follow-up on our officer-involved shooting from yesterday evening. Last night around 6 o'clock, one of our officers, a 13-year veteran, Officer Matthew Bolan, was at MLK in Moncrief, and he had found an abandoned car. That abandoned car was used in a home invasion yesterday afternoon on Sanchez Road on Jacksonville's south side. That was where a 93-year-old woman was home invaded and her car was taken. The car that he found was abandoned. He was off the side of the road investigating it when he saw a vehicle drive by. Officer Bolan recognized that car as a car that was used or taken in a carjacking from the day before on Calvin Street. Officer Bolan pulled out, got in behind the car, verified that was indeed the car that was taken from a Calvin Street carjacking, and attempted to stop that car. The car was occupied by 3 black males. That vehicle fled when he attempted to stop it. A short pursuit ensued, led him to 25th Street and Division Street. The suspects bailed out of the car after Officer Bolan did a maneuver to make them stop. The 3 males fled. Officer Bolan chased 2 of those males on foot, about 3 houses down on Division Street, into the backyard of a residence there on Division. Officer Bolan ran into the backyard of the residence after them. One of the 2 suspects was armed with a small silver .25 automatic handgun. That subject aimed that gun or pointed that gun at Officer Bolan. Officer Bolan, fearing for his life, fired at that suspect. They then moved from the backyard to the front yard. Officer Bolan continued to fire at that same suspect. That suspect was hit at least multiple times in the torso. The other suspect gave up, put his hands up, and cooperated with Officer Bolan. Officer Bolan held that subject until other officers arrived. The subject who was hit was transported to UF Health, where he subsequently died. Officer Bolan's first shooting was this one. Officer Bolan was placed as standard policy on administrative leave pending the investigation. Next of kin has been made on the expired subject. He's been identified as 21-year-old Homer Ken Warren, and he lived in the 4000 block of Catania Drive. He was a burglar. He had a couple convictions for burglary, had some alcohol violations, and several driving violations. The second subject who gave up, his name is Terrence Clark. He's 25 years old, and he has been arrested for some juvenile violations. Again, the Clark who gave up was not armed and decided not to point the gun at the officer, was not shot. That showed great discipline, what we call firearms discipline on Officer Bolan's part. It's not just shooting anybody that moved. He shot the one who was a threat, and he continued to shoot until that threat was eliminated. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The day-to-day work the police officers on the street do is dangerous. They're dealing with dangerous people who take these matters in their own hands. Aiming these guns at officers is not a smart thing to do, and in many cases will result in what happened to Mr. Warren. Give you some background on a couple cases that I've talked about. The one vehicle that was a carjacking vehicle that these subjects were in, that was a carjacking that happened the day before at 9:30 p.m. on Calvin Street, and that was where a female had made arrangements to meet 2 other females to buy some weed, some hair product. As she met those 2 females, 2 black males came up armed with guns and took her car from her and fled. And I've given you the details about the Sanchez Street, the one abandoned car that he was investigating. Again, that was yesterday afternoon at about 3:30 when 3 black males entered this 93-year-old woman's house and home invaded her and took her 2004 Honda. I can answer some questions now if anybody has them.
Director Chris Parento with Channel 4. The carjacking and the suspects from that, are they these 3 men that were involved in this incident with police?
That's what we're looking into. It may just be coincidental that carjacking suspects drive by when Officer Bolan is investigating a home invasion car that's there. It's good heads-up police work on Officer Bolan's part to not be completely focused on the abandoned car and notice the other car go by. But it's something we'll certainly look into, as well as the connection with Warren and Clark to know if they are the suspects indeed in that carjacking from Calvin Street. It's all part of what we'll be doing today.
What's the status on the 3rd occupant of that vehicle, and has Clark given any information on who that might be?
No, he's not been cooperative when it came to giving the information on the 3rd suspect. the identity of the third suspect and any kind of identifying characteristics are really outstanding. We don't have any information that would lead us to believe anything on it.
And that was, again, he went one direction and the other two went another, and Officer Bolan chased those two rather than the one.
Yes, he ended up taking and chasing two on foot. The two on foot went to the house on Division Street.
Any reason for that house? Did any of them live there? Do we know?
Can't find any connection to that house. I think that was just where the house that had the first ability to get into the backyard.
Any other questions?
David Bauerlein with the Times-Union. Can you tell me approximately how far apart they were when the shots were fired, and was it fired in the front or the back, or what part of the torso were the shots fired at?
They were in the backyard of the house, so I won't say it's a zero lot line, but these are very small yards. They were probably the distance of that yard apart or less. And the autopsy is being conducted today, so we'll have some more information as to where those shots were and how they were placed. And I can tell you they were in the upper body and I think one in the extremity. So we'll get some more information on that and send it out as appropriate.
Can you talk also about just how quickly did this all happen when the officer saw the gun? I mean, did the person who was fleeing turn and face him and then point the gun, or was he running and sort of pointing it behind him? What was the officer seeing as he was in pursuit?
I understand that with these officer-involved shootings, we don't get immediate information from the officers that are involved, so that's part of our investigative process, both from an administrative portion and from the investigation of the death. So those particular details are sometimes slow to come. I can tell you that from the base facts that we had, that it was a very fluid situation, rapidly changing, and when that subject turned and pointed that gun at Officer Bolan, the statements that we have and the information we have from the scene, that it was pretty quick. So.
Do you have any kind of preliminary finding on whether it was justifiable force, or is that something you'll have to do the investigation to make a determination?
Representative from the State Attorney's Office was out there last night, and they'll run a separate concurrent investigation. They'll make the determination as to whether the use of deadly force in this case was within Florida law. And we, from an administrative side, once that's concluded, we'll investigate the administrative use of deadly force. So all those things are forthcoming questions we have as well. Don't want to speculate, but on the surface, this is an armed subject who committed an aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer. I would have every reason to believe that if somebody's pointing a gun at me, the next thing that's going to happen is that bullet's going to come flying at me. I don't want that to happen, and I'm not going to stand around and wait to see if it doesn't.
Mike Lyons, First Coast News. Did the officer say anything to the suspect before he fired? Was he able to even say anything to him?
I don't know that, Mike, to be honest with you. Again, limited details come from the officer. It was relayed that he did turn at him with the gun, point the gun at him. Whether he was able to make those commands, we'll know. You don't always have to. And like I kind of alluded to, if these things are happening fast, the next thing that may be happening is me getting shot, and I don't want to have that happen, and I don't think Officer Bolan would want that to happen. So that's what occurred.
Maybe I missed it, didn't understand, but the home invasion is connected to these three guys. You know that for a fact? Or?
No, it's really kind of a convoluted set of facts as it goes. The home invasion, the only way it's related to the officer-involved shooting is that Officer Bolan had found the car from that. So in the course of his normal patrol, he sees this Honda on the side of the road, stops to investigate it. Lo and behold, it is the car that was taken a few hours earlier in this home invasion. Nobody in it, nobody occupied, no reason to believe, at least today, that the subjects from the car involved in the shooting are related to that home invasion. It just happenstance.
Any other questions?
This is one other question. The person who was killed, was he out on jail awaiting some sentencing, or do you know what his status was in terms of his, he had a criminal history, if he was out on bond at this time?
I didn't find that out. I don't know if you have done any other research that I haven't looked into greatly. I did look at his criminal history to see that he has some burglary arrests, quite a few alcohol arrests, quite a few driving arrests, but I don't have anything to tell you for certain that he's out of control.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks, Director.
Thank you, sir.